You ever notice how the people who left you alone, the ones who walked away without explanation, who treated your presence like it was optional, who made you feel like you were asking for too much just by existing, suddenly start reappearing? Not all at once, not dramatically, just there. A text out of nowhere, a like on something you posted months ago, a casual, "Hey, how have you been?" As if time collapsed and none of it mattered. And here's what nobody tells you about that moment. It's not random. It's not coincidence. It's not even really about you in the way you think. It's about them finally understanding what they lost. But more than that, it's about life teaching them a lesson you already learned the hard way. See, they're coming back because life showed them something you can't fake, can't replicate, and can't find just anywhere. They're coming back because they've been out there in the world trying to replace what you gave them, and they couldn't. They tried. They really did. They looked for your energy in other people. They looked for your patience, your depth, your way of seeing them. They looked for that specific feeling they had when they were around you, the one they didn't even notice until it was gone. And every single time they came up empty, not because those other people were worse, but because what you offered wasn't common. It was rare, and rarity doesn't announce itself. It only gets recognized they left because they didn't know what rare looked like in its absence. Here's the thing. Most people get wrong about this whole situation. They think the return is about regret. They think it's some grand romantic realization or a spiritual awakening on the other person's part. It's not. It's simpler and harder than that. It's economics. It's supply and demand. You were a supply they didn't know was limited until they went looking for it again and realized the market doesn't carry what you had. They thought they could find another you. They genuinely believed that your qualities, your consistency, your emotional availability, your care were standard features in people, and life humbled them fast. And if you're someone who's committed to seeing clearly, to living with your eyes open and your standards high, then make sure you're subscribed to this channel, because this isn't about feeding you feel-good lines or recycling the same tired advice. This is about clarity. This is about understanding the mechanics of human behavior, so you can move through life without confusion, without wondering why people do what they do. You're choosing to be part of a community that doesn't settle for surface-level explanations. You're here because you want the truth, even when it's uncomfortable. That's rare too. So let's get into what's really happening when they come back. Let's talk about the psychological architecture behind it. Because once you understand this, you won't be confused anymore. You won't be flattered. You won't be tempted. You'll just see it for the psychology behind why people return what it is. A delayed recognition of value they couldn't perceive in real time. When someone leaves your life, they do it with a story. They tell themselves something that makes it make sense. Maybe they needed space. Maybe they weren't ready. Maybe you were too much or not enough. Maybe they convinced themselves they'd find better, different, easier. And that story holds up for a while. It has to, because if it didn't, they'd have to confront the fact that they made a mistake. And most people aren't built to sit with that kind of discomfort. So they move forward, they distract themselves, they engage with new people, new situations, new dynamics. They try to fill the gap. But here's where it gets interesting. You can distract yourself from a feeling, but you can't erase the baseline it's set. Once you've experienced a certain level of treatment, a certain quality of connection, your nervous system remembers it. Your subconscious keeps a record, and every new person you meet gets measured against that record, whether you're aware of it or not. So they're out there cycling through interactions, and every single one is being compared to you. Not consciously at first, but eventually the pattern becomes undeniable. No one listens the way you did. No one shows up the way you did. No one makes them feel seen the way you did. And slowly, the story they told themselves starts to crack. That's when the curiosity kicks in. That's when they, understanding your own rare value, start wondering what you're doing, how you're doing, whether you've moved on. That's when your name starts coming up in their mind at random times. Not because they're obsessed, but because their brain is trying to solve a problem. Why can't I find this again? And the only answer that makes sense is the one they didn't want to accept. You were different, you were rare, and they left anyway. Now, here's the part that matters. Here's the part that separates people who grow from people who repeat the same cycles forever. When they come back, your response tells the entire story of who you've become in their absence. And this is where most people fail the test without even knowing there was one. They get excited. They get hopeful. They think, finally they see it. Finally they get it. And they open the door again like nothing happened. Like the absence didn't cost them anything. like the disrespect was just a misunderstanding. But that's not growth. That's nostalgia. That's you responding to the memory of who they were, not the reality of who they showed you they are. Because here's the truth. Someone coming back doesn't mean they've changed. It means they've hit a wall. It means their other options didn't work out. It means they're lonely or bored or reminded of you by something external. It doesn't mean they've done the internal work to become someone worthy of the space they once occupied in your life. And you, what happens when life teaches them your worth, don't owe them the benefit of the doubt just because they finally noticed what they had. Let's talk about what rarity actually looks like. Because this isn't about being perfect. It's not about being some untouchable ideal. Rare doesn't mean flawless. It means specific. It means you have a combination of qualities that don't usually coexist. You're emotionally intelligent, but also boundaried. You're compassionate, but not a pushover. You're deep, but not draining. You're present, but not desperate. You give without keeping score, but you also know when to stop giving. You're patient, but your patience has limits. You're understanding, but you don't tolerate being misunderstood on purpose. Most people have one or two of those traits. You have the full set, and that's what they couldn't find. That's what they're coming back for. Not you as a person, but you as a resource. You as a feeling, you as a solution to the discomfort they're experiencing now that they're out in the cold. And here's where you have to be ruthless with your self-respect. You have to ask yourself, do I want to be chosen again, or do I want to be valued from the beginning? Because being someone's second choice after they tested the market isn't the compliment they think it is. It's an insult wrapped in familiarity. It's them saying, I didn't think you were that special, but I couldn't do better, so here I am. And if you accept that, you're teaching them that your value is negotiable, that your presence is a fallback plan, that they can leave and return as they please because you'll always be there waiting. But you're not the mirror moment when they face what they lost, a waiting room. You're not a backup option. You're not a safety net for people who didn't have the awareness to recognize what they had when they had it. And the moment you internalize that, everything changes. The moment you stop seeing their return as validation and start seeing it as proof that you were right to move on, you win. Not in some petty revenge way, but in the most important way. You reclaim your narrative. Let me paint you a picture of what that reclamation looks like in real life. There's a version of you that exists now or is being built right now that doesn't flinch when they come back. This version of you doesn't block them out of anger, doesn't ignore them out of spite, doesn't even feel the need to explain why you're not interested anymore. This version of you is just calm, grounded, clear. You see the message. You feel nothing. Maybe a faint flicker of recognition, like seeing an old jacket you used to wear, but no pull, no temptation, no second guessing. This version of you has spent the time they were gone, building something they're not part of. You've invested in yourself. You've healed the parts of you that made their absence hurt. You've learned the difference between connection and convenience. You've raised your standards not as a defense mechanism, but as a natural byproduct of knowing your worth. You've surrounded yourself with people who see you clearly from the start, who don't need to lose you to appreciate you, who don't need a comparison to know you're valuable. And when they come back and they will stop waiting for validation, you were always enough because life always teaches people what they refuse to learn the easy way. You're not cruel. You're not cold. You're just unavailable. Not because you're playing games, but because the door they walked out of doesn't lead back in. You've rebuilt, you've moved on, and the space they used to occupy is either empty by choice or filled by someone who actually deserves it. That's power. That's self-respect. That's what it looks like when you stop letting other people's lack of awareness dictate your availability. Now, let's talk about the practical side of this, because understanding the psychology is one thing. Living it is another. So here's what you do when they come back. First, you pause. You don't react immediately. You don't let the surprise or the curiosity or the old feelings make decisions for you. You pause and you ask yourself one question. What do I actually want here? Not what do they want? Not what would make them happy? What do you want? And be honest. If you want closure, fine. If you want to see if they've changed, fine. But if you want them back because you're lonely, because you're nostalgic, because you haven't done the work to move on, that's not a reason. That's a wound. And wounds don't make good decision makers. Second, you observe their behavior. Words are cheap. Apologies are easy. I miss you costs nothing. What matters is what they do. Are they asking how you are? Or are they talking about themselves? Are they acknowledging what they did wrong, or are they minimizing it? Are they showing up the power of silence and detachment consistently, or is this a one-time reach out? Are they respecting your pace, or are they trying to rush you back into familiarity? Watch what they do. That's the only data that matters. Third, you protect your peace. Even if they've changed, even if they're sincere, even if part of you wants to try again, you protect your peace by moving slowly, by not giving them access to your life, your energy, your emotions, just because they asked, they had access once. They misused it. They don't get the benefit of the doubt anymore. They get probation. And probation means they prove themselves over time, not over a conversation. And fourth, you remember why they're back. They're not back because you're different. You're probably exactly who you were. They're back because they're different, because life humbled them, because they finally grew up enough to see what was in front of them. And that's fine. People grow, people learn, but growth on their end doesn't obligate you to give them another chance. You don't owe them your forgiveness. You don't owe them your time. You don't owe them a redemption arc. They owe themselves that. And whether or not you're part of their story going forward is entirely your choice. Let me tell you what happens when you make the choice to stay unavailable to people who didn't value you the first time. You start attracting people who do. You start building relationships that don't require you to beg for consistency. You stop wasting energy on people who only see your value in hindsight. You stop being the lesson, rebuilding yourself. While they're watching from a distance, someone else needed to learn and start being the standard. Someone else is ready to meet. Your life becomes quieter, simpler, more intentional, because you're no longer letting people in who aren't ready to stay. And here's the beautiful part. The people who left start to fade, not because you block them or cut them off, but because they become irrelevant. They're living in a version of you that doesn't exist anymore. They're reaching for a version of the relationship that you've outgrown. And when they come back, they're not even talking to you. They're talking to a memory, and memories don't respond. This is the shift that changes everything. When you stop seeing their return as a reflection of your worth and start seeing it as a reflection of their regret, when you stop waiting for people to see you and start living like you already see yourself, when you stop being impressed by people choosing you after they've tried everyone else, that's when you become unreachable. Not in an arrogant way, but in a self-possessed way. You're no longer available to people who only value you when you're gone. And if you're tracking with this, if this is hitting you in a way that makes you want to keep going deeper, then make sure you're subscribed, because this is the kind of conversation we're having here every single time. No fluff, no recycled motivation, just the clearest, most honest breakdown of how people operate and how you can move through the world without losing yourself. You're not just watching content, you're building a framework. You're becoming someone who, when they come back, you decide, not them, doesn't get confused by other people's inconsistency. And that's the community we're building here. People who choose clarity over comfort. So here's the final thing I want to leave you with. The people who are coming back aren't villains. They're not evil. They're just human. They made a mistake. They didn't see you clearly. They took you for granted, and now they're trying to fix it. But your job isn't to make them feel better about that mistake. Your job isn't to be the proof that people can come back and everything will be fine. Your job is to protect the version of yourself that survived their absence, to honor the version of yourself that cried, that questioned, that rebuilt. That version of you deserves better than being the consolation prize for someone who finally ran out of options. You were rare. You are rare. And rarity doesn't beg to be recognized. It just exists. And the right people see it immediately. They don't need to leave to appreciate it. They don't need comparison to value it. They don't need time away to realize it. They just know. And those are the people you're saving your energy for. Not the ones who come back, but the ones who never left. Not because they're perfect, but because they saw you clearly from the beginning. That's the standard now. That's the new baseline. Final truth, rare people don't beg, they rise. And anyone who doesn't meet it doesn't get access. Not out of bitterness, but out of respect. Respect for yourself, respect for your time, respect for the life you're building. That doesn't include people who only see your value when it's gone. And you're not the same person they left. You're not even the same person who let them leave. You've evolved. You've learned. You've become someone who doesn't need their return to feel whole. And that's the most powerful position you could ever be in. So when they come back, Let them see what they lost. Let them realize what rare actually looks like, and then let them sit with that because you're no longer available to people who couldn't see you when you were right in front of them. You've moved on and you're not coming